Hey guys, this is James Quick, Microsoft Technical Evangelist, and I'm here to talk about incorporating REST APIs into an App Studio project. So in part one, we went into App Studio and we built the shell for our project. We added a custom database which had some properties related to movies because we're going to be using the Rotten Tomatoes API. And then we finished by pulling down the source code, and now we'll kind of dig in and make the necessary changes to be able to take the Rotten Tomatoes data as our data source. So first off, on the screen right now, you can see my contact information. Twitter handle is @jquickwit. Microsoft email is jaquick@microsoft.com. If you're local to the Miami-Fort Lauderdale area, the meetup is the Miami-Fort Lauderdale Windows App Developers. And my blog is blogs.msdn.com/quick_thoughts. So that's where we just had part one, and I've got part two up here now. And then lastly, where this video will be posted is on my YouTube channel. You can find it at JQ YouTube. Notice the capitalizations there. So we want to first of all open up our Visual Studio project, and I have on my desktop, I've got the folder where the project is, and there's the App Studio solution. I've already got it open, so let me go ahead and open this. And let me view my Solution Explorer, and we're going to talk about three different files in here that we're going to work with. And those are going to be in the shared folder under the Data Providers subfolder. So let's go down to Data Providers. And again, we're working in a universal project, so we have a project for Windows 8, Windows Phone, and then we have this shared stuff below. So let's open up the data providers. We'll open up Service Data Provider. Let's open up the data schema, the in theater schema. And then let's open up the data sources, and we want to go down to in theaters data source. So the first one we'll take a look at is the in-theater schema, and this is just basically the object model for the collection that we created in App Studio. If you remember, we created a collection that had title, rating, image URL, and synopsis. Those are the four things that we wanted. So all this file does is create that object model for us, which is what our UI is already set to bind to. So when we get our data from Rotten Tomatoes API, we just need to convert into this model, and App Studio, the stuff that is created, will take care of the rest. So the next file, and that's pretty quick, pretty easy. The next file we want to look at is the Service Data Provider. So what they're doing in here is they have a URL for where they have stored our collection database, and they're taking in some parameters and basically going out and making a request with this load, so this download async with that URL, and then in the download async method, they're just making a call out, getting the response, and then they're setting that to the UI. So this is the part that we really want to change. So I'm going to actually go out and close this file, and then in the Solution Explorer, I'm going to actually get rid of this file. So I'm going to delete this. Say OK. And now on my desktop, I've downloaded a copy of a custom service data provider that I created, and it's in my OneDrive. I'll provide the link below, but you can get this on my OneDrive. So I'm just going to go out to Visual Studio, and in that data providers folder, add an existing item, and that existing item will be on the desktop, and it'll be that file, the service data provider.cs. So let me open that up. We'll take a look at what we got. First off, you'll notice that we have a place for a Rotten Tomatoes API key. So again, this first part, we're working with the Rotten Tomatoes API. So we'll need our API key. And then we have some strings that represent different API calls that tack on the Rotten Tomatoes API key down below. So we also have three different methods. We have the download async, the load, and the copy. And the download async is what just goes out and uses one of these calls, these API calls, and it awaits the get string async with the HTTP client, and it returns that. So that's how we're actually going out and downloading the JSON response. And inside the load is where we actually say we want to call the download async method given this API call. So the first one we're using is in theaters. And once we get that string data, that response, we want to call a copy method, which basically takes that response and converts into the object model that we talked about earlier, the in theater schema. So that's where we're actually doing that conversion. And again, we're taking from the in theater schema, we're having a temp object, and we're creating a temp object each time for each movie in the list of movies coming back from Rotten Tomatoes. And we're taking the movie.title, the movie year, the movie posters, and I've done a little string replacement here because they've changed up a little bit of their API, and the movie synopsis, and then we just add that to a collection, and that's what we return and bind to the UI. So the one thing I need to add here is I need to copy in my API key. So I copy it in and scroll down real fast. Hopefully nobody caught that. I'm going to save this file and go ahead and close it. And back in the in theaters data source, that's where we need to make a few more small changes, just a couple, to be able to use that file that we just created, that file that we just replaced. So since we just replaced this file, we lost the reference that we previously had to it, so we'll just go out, resolve, and add a reference to it. And then in this constructor here, we're not taking any parameters in that file that we just added. We don't need any parameters, so we can just delete those parameters, save that, and now I'm going to switch my debug target or startup project to Windows 8, and I'm going to run on my local machine. And if we're lucky, we'll see data coming back from the Rotten Tomatoes API. So again, on that Rotten Tomatoes specific file for the service data provider, there's not really anything you need to change for this demo. You can basically copy that down, save it, and then here in your in theaters data source, add again the reference to that file, and then just strip out those parameters in the call. And you also need to add your API key for the Rotten Tomatoes API. So you will have to sign up for that. So let's give this a second to load. And hopefully, if we're lucky, there we go, we'll see some movie information coming back. So the first one is Ninja Turtles, which I'm a huge Ninja Turtle fan. And if I click on Ninja Turtles, I'll go into the details and see details about the Ninja Turtles, go into November Man. Never actually heard of that one. But anyway, so it's working. All the data is coming through. And all you have to do is go out, and I will post a link below, but all you have to do is go out, grab that service data provider file, the one that we just pulled in and edited, and just replace the one that already exists, add your API key, and then change this call in here to be able to incorporate REST APIs from Rotten Tomatoes. So in the next video, we're going to take this a little more general, and we're going to work with a general in theaters data source, a general service data provider file, which will have these three methods: the download, the load, and the copy. But it won't have specific calls for the Rotten Tomatoes API. So it'll be more general. You can apply it to different things. So stay tuned for that third video coming soon.